Australia is a vast island continent located in the southern hemisphere, bordered by the Indian and Pacific Oceans. It's the world's sixth largest country, with a diverse landscape that includes everything from arid deserts to lush rainforests and long stretches of pristine coastline. For thousands of years, this land has been home to Aboriginal Australians, whose connection to the land is both spiritual and practical, shaping their cultures and ways of life in profound ways. Positioned far from the major landmasses of Asia, Africa, and the Americas, Australia's isolation allowed for the development of unique ecosystems, with flora and fauna found nowhere else on Earth. Similarly, the Aboriginal cultures that emerged here are equally distinct, marked by a deep reverence for the land and a rich tradition of storytelling, art, and community life. Our story begins over 65,000 years ago, in a time when the ancestors of today's Aboriginal Australians first set foot on the Australian continent. Imagine a world where giant megafauna roamed, a land of lush forests, expansive deserts, and an unbroken horizon. It was here that these early humans, skilled in navigation and survival, began to establish communities that would eventually give rise to the oldest continuous cultures known to humanity. Archaeological evidence, such as the ancient rock art found in places like Arnhem Land and the Kimberley, gives us a glimpse into these early societies. These paintings are more than just art. They're a window into the spiritual and everyday lives of these people. The Dreamtime, or Jikorpa, as it's known in some Aboriginal languages, forms the foundation of their worldview. This is a time before time, when ancestral beings shaped the land, its animals, and its people. These stories, passed down through generations, have maintained their relevance and are still shared in Aboriginal communities today. Aboriginal Australians have a deep and profound connection to the land. To them, the land is not just a resource, but a living entity, an extension of their own being. This connection is evident in their careful management of the environment through practices like fire stick farming, which involves controlled burns to encourage the growth of certain plants and reduce the risk of large wildfires. In 1788, a new chapter in the history of Aboriginal Australia began, one marked by profound and often devastating changes. The arrival of the First Fleet, led by Captain Arthur Phillip, brought with it British settlers who would forever alter the course of history for the Indigenous peoples of Australia. To the British, Australia was terra nullius, an empty land ripe for the taking. This doctrine ignored the existence of Aboriginal people and their deep connections to the land. The consequences were immediate and severe. Displacement, disease, and conflict took a devastating toll on Aboriginal populations, whose numbers plummeted within the first few decades of colonization. But despite the immense pressures, Aboriginal people resisted in various ways. From the early frontier wars to passive resistance, they fought to maintain their way of life. Figures like Pemulwuy in New South Wales and Yagan in Western Australia became symbols of this resistance, leading their people against overwhelming odds. As European settlers spread across the continent, Aboriginal people faced not just physical displacement, but also attempts to erase their cultures. The policy of assimilation, particularly through the forced removal of children, now known as the Stolen Generations, sought to integrate Aboriginal people into white society by severing their connections to their culture, language, and families. Between 1910 and 1970, thousands of Aboriginal children were taken from their families, placed in institutions, or fostered out to non-Indigenous families. This was done under the belief that Aboriginal people would eventually die out and that the children could be civilized and integrated into mainstream society. The impact of this policy was devastating, leading to loss of identity, trauma, and a generational legacy of pain that continues to this day. But even in the face of such adversity, Aboriginal cultures and communities persisted. Despite numerous attempts to suppress their culture, they demonstrated remarkable resilience. They adapted to their circumstances, persevered through hardships, and ensured that their traditions were carried forward through generations. The mid-20th century saw a shift in the relationship between Aboriginal Australians and the wider society. The fight for civil rights, land rights, and recognition gained momentum, leading to landmark events like the 1967 referendum, which overwhelmingly passed, giving the federal government the power to make laws for Aboriginal people and include them in the census. The struggle for land rights took center stage in the 1970s and 80s, with the Wave Hill Walk-Off led by Vincent Lingiari marking a pivotal moment. This act of defiance against poor working conditions and exploitation led to the eventual return of some traditional lands to the Gurindji people. The Gurindji people are an Aboriginal Australian group from the Northern Territory. They are traditionally connected to the land around the Victoria River region, including the area known as Wave Hill. The Mabwa case in 1992 was another landmark victory, overturning the doctrine of terra nullius and recognizing the existence of native title, which acknowledged the land rights of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Today, Aboriginal Australians continue to shape the identity and future of the nation. From politics and the arts to education and business, Aboriginal people are making their mark in every aspect of Australian society. Yet, the challenges remain significant. Issues of health, education, and economic opportunity are ongoing, and the legacy of past injustices still looms large. However, there is also a growing recognition and celebration of Aboriginal cultures. Initiatives to revive languages, preserve sacred sites, and promote cultural awareness are gaining momentum. The Uluru Statement from the Heart, delivered in 2017, called for a First Nations voice enshrined in the Constitution and for a process of truth-telling about Australia's history. This is a testament to the resilience and strength of Aboriginal people who continue to advocate for their rights and recognition. The history of Aboriginal Australia is one of the oldest and most remarkable stories of human endurance, creativity, and survival, from the ancient dream time to the present day.